Welcome into Outkick the Show. I'm your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Thursdays wherever across this great country or this great land you may be. We got a lot of things to be excited about. Major League Baseball back and running. The NBA starts tonight if you're a big NBA fan, and hockey starts on Saturday, meaning by Saturday there will be tons of Major League Baseball games, tons of NHL games, and tons of NBA games, a absolute cornucopia of sports excess for you to dive into. Lots of stuff to get into today's show. I will be on Lock It In here in about 45 minutes at 4 Eastern, 3 Central, 2 Mountain, 1 Pacific on FS1. You can flip over your televisions and watch me on there as well, except I will be in a jacket and a nice shirt. All right, several different things that I want to run into right off the top. Go sign up for Outkick VIP. I love all of you who are signing up for Outkick VIP. We have got a backlog now of thousands for books to be signed. I appreciate all of you signing up. This is probably going to be the last week that we give away an autographed copy of the book. So if you want to sign up or you want to sign up with somebody, the Outkick message board, VIP message board is really active. You can comment on all the articles. You can call the Outkick VIP phone line on the radio program. There is so much to dive into. If you become an Outkick VIP, go sign up today before the end of July and put us on what is an unbelievable month that we have had at Outkick so far. Okay, several different things that are underway here. Again, I want to keep reiterating, we have reached the peak in Florida, in Texas, and in Arizona. Cases are coming down. The overall infection rate is coming down. I don't know how long it's going to take to get back to normalcy in those states, but just know that we have reached the peak and we are on the backside of that outbreak. And so, even though the media is continuing to try to scare you to death, I saw a stat today that I thought was mind-blowing in the Wall Street Journal. A couple of data points that I thought were wild. 75% of people in an American poll feared either themselves or a family member being hospitalized with the coronavirus. Guess what percentage of people in this country have actually been hospitalized from the coronavirus? 0.01%. So 75% of the nation, 3 in every 4, feared they or a family member would be hospitalized. The actual number, 0.01%, okay? And this data matters in a big way. It should be a massive story. It has not been a massive story. How well Florida and California and Arizona and Texas have done compared to New York. But the data does not lie. Look at it. Also, if you're under the age of 24, you're under more danger from the flu and pneumonia. And teachers in Sweden, where they did not shut down the overall country, were under no more danger from the coronavirus than grocery store workers. Teachers have been getting a ton of attention for not being willing to go back and teach. Grocery store workers have, all to my knowledge, continued to work, gotten limited amount of attention recently. Neither one of them are under substantial danger, but in Sweden, the danger to grocery store workers and teachers was nearly identical. If we are requiring all of our grocery store workers to go back, then I don't understand how in the world all teachers are not going back to work either. So actually look at the data and do me a favor, all right? Actually look at the data. Do me a favor there. A couple of other things that are worth diving into. College football. We got a lot going on with college football. In particular in college football, the ACC came out yesterday with a plan that I really like. Notre Dame has not been in a conference since 1887. Notre Dame is now going to play 10 games against the ACC and potentially win their first ever conference championship, at least have a chance potentially to beat Clemson, because I think it's likely that Notre Dame is the second best team in the ACC, which is why Clemson's odds to win the title in the ACC went from -500 to -300 with the news that Notre Dame was going to be in the conference. They will play 15 teams, 10 different games, and they're still potentially trying to preserve these rivalry games: USC, Clemson, Florida State, Florida, Louisville, Kentucky, and Georgia, Georgia Tech. All of those potentially being preserved because the ACC plan allows them to play 10 conference games and 1 additional opponent inside of their state. Now, what is the SEC going to do? The SEC is considering still a 12-game schedule, they're considering a 10-game conference-only schedule, and they are considering a smaller scale 8-game conference schedule, I believe. What would I like the most? I kind of like the idea of the 10-game SEC season. If you're wondering who the new 2 opponents, because the SEC usually only plays 8, who those 2 new opponents would be, it would be the rotating opponents for the next 2 years. So you'd get 10. I'd also like to see a way where you could play an in-state opponent, much like the ACC is doing, so you could preserve all 4 of those games and then also theoretically go out and add one more additional opponent to be able to play an in-state foe that wouldn't require very much travel, basically a bus trip. We'll see what ends up happening with this plan, but I don't dislike it at all. I love the idea of a 10-game SEC. I also love the idea, by the way, of just tossing away divisions for a year and taking the top 2 teams in the SEC, blaming it on the pandemic, so you could end up with LSU and Alabama playing in the SEC championship game, or for that matter, Georgia and Florida playing in the SEC championship game. I think that would be a lot cooler, and you'd be playing a lot more of the conference, so there would be less arguments about who got a better schedule, who got a worse schedule. For instance, Alabama would be playing Georgia and Florida in the same year, both from the SEC East, along with Tennessee, which are theoretically, at least on paper, the 3 best teams in the SEC East this year. Alabama wouldn't be dodging anybody. So I really like this idea. We'll see what ends up happening. Regardless, I see it as a very strong positive for those of us, myself obviously included, who want college football to be being played. The idea of building in a couple of extra bye weeks and having some flexibility in the event of positive tests is, I think, an overall positive for the return of college football. Joe Kelly. This is one of the most ridiculous decisions I have ever seen in the history of Major League Baseball. Joe Kelly, I've been watching this Dodger-Astros series because I'm crazy hard up for some sports. So I watched both of these games. I don't remember the last time I watched this much of Major League Baseball, especially at games that otherwise are so early in the season. I watched both of these. Last night's game went to 12 innings. You had the extra runner starting off at second base in the extra innings, and the Dodgers ended up finding a way to win. Well, on Wednesday, you had Joe Kelly just throwing the ball at the Astros like crazy, and then saying, "Nice swing, bitch," to Carlos Correa when he walked off of the field. Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, suspended him for 8 games. That's the equivalent of 22 games in a 162-game season. And he didn't even hit a batter. And this is where it becomes particularly glaring. He was trying to draw attention to the Astros to get some payback for their cheating. And so in reality, he got more punishment for being angry about the Astros cheating than any Astros player did for actually cheating, which is just a fundamental miscarriage of sports justice. And I don't understand how Rob Manfred didn't see that. Now, I understand that they gave immunity to the Houston Astro players in order to participate in the investigation, and therefore that's why they couldn't suspend them. And I understand that they suspended managers instead, but you can't in any way justify this decision, whether you're a Dodgers fan, whether you're an Astros fan, whether you're a big Major League Baseball fan, or even if you don't care at all. This was a big swing and a miss by Rob Manfred, and I say that even though earlier this week I've given Manfred a lot of credit for his ability to respond to the Miami Marlins debacle in an intelligent way instead of running around like his hair was on fire. He actually made a really good decision, okay? So I think this is a failure on behalf of Rob Manfred in making the right decision about what should happen to Joe Kelly. NBA starts tonight, and yesterday ESPN dropped a bombshell on them. Really well-reported story about the NBA's relationship with China. And the NBA hypocrisy is going to be China is not going to be mentioned tonight when the NBA tries to become social justice warriors. They are going to be arguing we need to use our platform to speak out about all sorts of issues, and they have not said a word about China. Not Steve Kerr, not Greg Popovich, not Adam Silver, not LeBron James. In fact, Adam Silver, commissioner of the NBA, actually said that the NBA had mutual respect for China. So what actually does that mean? Does the NBA respect the concentration camps? Do they respect the lack of religious freedom? Do they respect the lack of basic human rights, the lack of First Amendment protests, the lack of democracy, the ability to pull books off of bookshelves in libraries and ban them if they offend the overall leaders of China? Do they have mutual respect for Hong Kong losing its democracy? This is shameful. The NBA talks all the time about being on the right side of history. This is an obsession of left-wingers on social media. They all want to talk about being on the right side of history. Do you know what is indisputably the wrong side of history? Being on the side of people who are against basic human rights and human decency around the world. Being on the side of the closest government in the world to modern-day Nazis in terms of concentration camps, expanding rights, expanding property, and also not having any interest or desire to allow democracy. This is absolutely indefensible. And so the NBA should be called on their hypocrisy. The article, credit to ESPN for actually writing it, although I haven't seen it discussed on their airwaves at all today. It is interesting that they published the article on ESPN.com, but then they didn't say a single word about it on any of their shows all day long. Hopefully they will talk about it tomorrow as a glaring example of hypocrisy, that the NBA players can have all these different things written on their back, but none of them have to do with human rights around the world. You can't claim to care about human rights in the United States and take money from modern-day Nazis in China. You can't do it. That's blood money. That is indefensible by the NBA. That is the height of hypocrisy, and it should be the media's job and responsibility across the landscape to actually speak truth to power and point out how unacceptable the NBA's behavior is here. I think the NBA should announce that they have no relationship going forward any longer with China. They should stop bending the knee to China. They should stop allowing China to use propaganda from their criticisms of the United States. And the NBA, along with a lot of people in this country, need to understand. They need to understand that we are in a modern-day Cold War with China. And China is throwing punches at us all day long, and we're not even facing them. They are punching us in the back of the head over and over and over again because we're too busy fighting with each other. They are sowing discord through our social media, and instead of realizing that we are being confronted by the new rise of a Cold War, by an authoritarian dictatorship that is intent on propagating its version of the world everywhere, we are internally fighting. Again, China allowed the coronavirus to leave its country and spread around the world. The coronavirus alone in China caused more damage to the United States economy than the Nazis did during World War II. If you study history, we actually got out of the Great Depression in a large degree because of the money that the government spent on men and materials to go fight World War II. China and the coronavirus have been more devastating to the American economy here in our homeland than the Nazis were in World War II. This is an unbelievable story that should matter a great deal to all Americans. Instead of recognizing it, most Americans are too busy arguing with each other, which is partly fomented by China. It's a huge story. It's the number one story of our time right now. This geopolitical conflict with China, the NBA is a metaphor for that conflict within the context of sports. The Pac-12 is a disaster. The Pac-12 has been paying the LA Times to write favorable articles about the Pac-12 in order to get better media coverage. This is a big story in the context of college athletics. This is why I say you have to be skeptical of all media coverage. Literally, the Pac-12 has been paying the LA Times to write better stories about its people and schools without allowing any of the readers to know it. Let me just be clear and transparent as I can be about this. I have never taken a dollar from anybody that I write about to write more favorable things about them in my life. Nobody at Outkick has ever done it either. If we are doing advertisements, I am straightforward, direct, and telling you, hey, this is an advertisement. Been doing that for years, that's fine. If the Pac-12 wants to pay to buy ads inside of the LA Times, that's fine. But you can't pay to buy articles that are disguised as independent articles when you are the one who is paying for them to be written. This is unbelievable when you actually look at the stories. I'm kind of blown away by all these stories coming down as they are, one after the other after the other. Finally, I put up a poll. I said, do you feel like, based on their Twitter feeds, and I'm paraphrasing, sports media is rooting against sports coming back? You guys can vote on this in Facebook, and you can vote in this in Periscope right now. Based on reading their Twitter feeds, do you feel like the average sports media member that you follow appears to be rooting against sports coming back based on what they are tweeting, based on what they are sharing? My answer is there's a lot more negativity from the sports media than there is positivity. And it seems like the vast majority of you agree with me because 56,000 of you voted in my poll and 77% of you said that you agree with me. Now, I recognize that my poll on Twitter is not an accurate reflection of everyone who is on Twitter. There are lots of different sports fans. Not all of them follow me. Not all of them have voted in my poll. So to his credit, I called out the sports media and said, would someone else put up a poll asking the same exact question? Darren Ravel did, and his audience, which is obviously different than my audience, also voted, and 48% of his audience agreed that the sports media was sharing articles that made them believe that the sports media did not want sports back. So even Darren Ravel's audience nearly split 50-50 on whether the sports media wanted sports back. If you combine all of those voters, nearly 90,000 of them, I understand some people overlapped because some people follow both of us, but nearly 90,000 people voted, and 66%, 2/3 of all of sports fans, believe that the sports media online is rooting against the return of sports. I would encourage you to go read the article that I wrote about it up on Outkick. This is emblematic of a large issue, which is, I talked about this yesterday. There are people who want things to be accomplished, creators, and there are people who want to destroy things. Creators are about finding a way to make something happen. If you found a business, you are a creator. You are trying to find value, create something larger than yourself. If you are a builder, you are a creator. One of the things that I worry now is social media seems uniquely created to destroy. Cancel culture is destruction, not creation. Tearing down existing monuments is destruction, not creation. Deciding things that are inherently bad, and we know are going to be bad, to replace things that are imperfect but tend to be good, is also a failure. All right, let me explain. Defunding the police is an example of a social media idea that we know 100% is a bad idea. It's not designed to construct anything. It's designed to destroy. We know what happens when you take more police off the streets. The murder rate and the shooting rate skyrockets. This is what we're seeing in New York, which is having a multi-decade rise in shootings and murders. We know what happens in Atlanta. We know what happens in Chicago. We know what happens in LA. We know what happens in all of our big cities all over the country. When you argue for there to be less police officers, you allow for more crime to occur. And everywhere across the width and breadth of this country, in big cities, crime is skyrocketing because defunding the police is attacking the wrong source. Some police are bad, a tiny minority of them prosecute them when they break the law, but the idea that taking them off the streets and keeping them from going after people breaking the law is somehow going to make any city or any individual community safer is fundamentally broken. It is fundamentally broken. And you know what ends up happening? Athletes who are trying to use their platforms to speak out are actually leading to worse results. There are going to be many people murdered who would otherwise be alive if there had not been protests, if there had not been an argument to defund the police. This is what happens. This is a broken system of social media. This is how destruction, as opposed to construction, has been occurring across our entire nation. And by the way, it's a Republican problem, it's a Democrat problem, it's an independent problem. This isn't partisan. Trying to destroy things and replacing them with things that are not as good is the exact opposite of what America stands for. We are a dynamic and evolving constantly country, but we are always striving towards betterment, more perfect union, not a less perfect union. Social media is leading us towards a less perfect union right now because of its embrace of emotion and of its idea that, hey, we've got to do something, even if that something is actually the exact wrong thing to be actually doing. All right, I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Thursday. I'm about to hop on FS1. Check out Fox Bet Live, the new name for Lock It In, as we have our fourth different show of the week. Kisses to all of you. DBAP, unless you need to SBAP, I am Clay Travis, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Great show coming. We'll have a really good radio program tomorrow morning. Kisses. See y'all. Bye. Love you. Thank you, Facebook.